future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Hey, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm your host, Wendi Cooper, and it's time to sit back, let go, and start living unfiltered. Sorry. Those applause are for me, right, Tony?
They are.
So here we are, living unfiltered, and it is actually morning time here in Los Angeles because I am pre-taping this show for next Tuesday night, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, because my guest, this is the only time he could make it. And I really wanted to do this interview. But Tony, how the heck are you?
I'm the heck pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Where's Kurt? No.
Yeah, right. He's probably still in bed.
Still in bed with his wife.
With his wife.
The
yes.
newlywed. Of course they're
legal.
Still in bed.
Yeah. They're not living in sin anymore.
So, well, it's kind of fun to have you here working the board, Tom.
Well, thank you very much.
Tony, by the way, owns the station, and Tony has his own show, and it is called On Air with Tony Sweet.
And Truth Be Told.
And Truth Be Told.
I have
Oh,
two
that's
shows.
right. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
Just forget.
Don't forget again. No, I'm just kidding.
So I'm going to cut right to the chase because I want as much time as possible on the show. At Living Unfiltered, we try to have very interesting guests, and sometimes we just try to have a guest. And that's usually when it boils down to my nieces. No, I'm kidding. But every guest that I have on the show really, at the end of the day, comes through with some really fantastic, fantastic takeaways, I'd like to say. And we always like to keep things light and kind of funny here. And my guest last night, I had the pleasure and honor of being at the Mystic Journey bookstore on the very famous and hip Abbot Kinney, which used to be the very famous homeless Abbot Kinney. Well, you knew that, right? Okay. But it's pretty cool now. Pretty hip. Too hip, actually. We wish it would go back to like a fine balance of homeless and hip because it's getting a little too cool. But my guest tonight, is Mark Anthony, and Mark Anthony is known as the psychic lawyer. I know, sounds weird, but is the author of the bestseller Never Letting Go and newly released Evidence of Eternity, which I am about 20 pages away from finishing. He is a world-renowned fourth-generation psychic medium who communicates with spirits. Mark is an Oxford-educated attorney licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. He also attended in England. He actually attended, and this was really fascinating last night to hear about this place and how Mark is such a funny human being. Mark, actually, I am going to welcome you to the show because I cannot wait to converse with you. Welcome, Mark Anthony.
Well, thank y'all. Thank you very much. I must be channeling Elvis.
Thank you for being here because you're going to find out why this is so special to me. But last night when I was at the Mystic Journey bookstore, where you had, what do you call that, a session or?
I refer to it as a gallery reading because you have a group of people there and I make connections for audience members.
Yes.
With their loved ones in spirit.
Yeah. And I had to admire you very much for how you handle the crowd. How you really do handle the crowd. Because, Tony, it's interesting. Mark starts off, you're like a stand-up comedian. I mean, seriously, is that something that you were in a past life or you want to be in your next life or you are in this life?
Well, growing up as an attorney and a psychic medium and in a family that was filled with psychics, I have to have a sense of humor.
Well, you have to have a sense of humor when you have to deal with a crowd that is like, I felt for you last night because I do a lot of public speaking and I often deal with it with humor. And I always am reaching out to the crowd. I'll really pull somebody in the crowd and I'll try to make them feel special. At the same time, I'm scaring the living crap out of them, right? But your engaging manner, when I'm looking around the room and I'm watching, I was watching you from a totally different perspective than I think everyone else in the room.
Right.
Although I really wanted someone to come through for me, not who did, but I was really there admiring the way that you do what you do. It's just, you're so comical, and your comedy really makes people feel comfortable. And you were telling us the reason that you do that. Can you tell our listeners?
Well, for a number of reasons. When I was practicing law, I'm a trial lawyer. I've tried a couple hundred jury trials. And what I found, particularly on jury selection, people are nervous when they're being put on the spot. And if I could reduce their tension, so during jury selection, get people laughing, and then also be able to see that if they weren't laughing, they weren't relating to me. Well, when I was studying mediumship in England at the Arthur Findlay College for the Advancement of Psychic Science, we found that by keeping the energetic atmosphere lighter and brighter, it makes it easier for spirits to communicate. So I've developed my own technique. Also, when I call upon people, they're nervous. I mean, the number one fear in the United States is public speaking.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
People are more afraid of that than they are of getting eaten by a shark, run over by a car, struck by a bolt of lightning. They're afraid of standing up and saying their name to a room full of people. But if you can get them to chuckle a bit, it starts to reduce the tension. I mean, there's a reason for that old saying, laughter is the best medicine. It releases endorphins. And also, by doing that, it brings the negative energy barrier down, increases their vibration, and makes the connectivity with spirits much, much easier. So that's why I like to get people to relax and feel brighter. I remember in Houston, I was at an event, and this woman came up to me at the end, and she hugged me, and she said, "Since my husband died, I've just been so depressed. This is the first time I've laughed and not felt guilty about feeling good." And Wendy, that's very important for people who are going through the grieving process. And I get into that very heavily in Never Letting Go, and even more so in my new book, Evidence of Eternity, is that it's not showing disloyalty to a loved one if you start to feel good again. A lot of people subconsciously want to inflict pain upon themselves. It's almost like a form of self-torture, that if they're absolutely miserable, that is somehow honoring their deceased loved one. And I can assure you, it is not.
Mark, I'm going to get this out of the way so then I actually am anticipating with great anticipation the other side. I know that might sound weird, but I do not have a fear of death. And because I was faced with my own mortality and going through cancer, and then my mother dying of cancer at the same time, and watching her die of something that I was trying to fight, and then hearing a voice in the middle of the night telling me that I was going to be okay at the very beginning of my treatments, which was crazy, and I can hear that voice to this day, which I think got me through everything. But when my mom was dying in her last, hours, I couldn't think of anything really. I know it sounds weird to people, but I couldn't wait for my mother to pass, because to watch her pain, laying in the hospice bed, and knowing in my soul, my deepest soul, that where she was going to be so freaking awesome, that I sometimes think that I feel as though I have been there, and maybe I'm back for some reason, which, I studied Kabbalah a few years back, so they believe in the 10 dimensions and everything that you were talking about last night.
Yes.
But I know that it's a beautiful place, and I don't know how I really, really know that, and I really have no fear. What I think people fear, and I wanted to really ask this question, is how we die.
Yes. Yeah. It's no great secret. We're all going to die. Right. That is a given. Yet in our culture, we tend to pretend like we're not.
Yeah.
And then we create death as this great unknown, and therefore we look at it as a negative thing because people fear what they do not understand. Mm-hmm. And you and I get that there is an afterlife, and that once we go from being encased in a body, we go to a purely energetic state. When you revert back to a pure consciousness, you're pure energy. Energy doesn't get old, doesn't get tired, doesn't get sick. And that's why the spirits that I communicate with are always so happy and upbeat.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely correct about the how part. We're all going to die. It's the how part. What I find fascinating in the probably 10,000 readings that I've conducted for people, spirits don't tend to get too caught up in how they died. They will transmit that information to me, yet here in the material world, we can spend our entire lives focusing on the death and dying aspect of our loved one instead of looking at what their life was.
Right, celebrating their life.
Celebrating their life. But on the other hand, I do understand that. In Evidence of Eternity, I've written a chapter, Crime, homicide and the other side, suicide and the other side.
That's
losing
the one
a
I'm
child.
on right now.
Yeah, suicide. That's a very intense chapter because suicide has touched everyone, including
Yes.
myself. My best friend took his own life. And I've known people who've been murdered, and certainly as a criminal defense attorney and a prosecutor, I've dealt with more than my fair share of homicide victims, both on this side and the other side. So there certainly is a justification for people feeling how their loved one died. But a spirit looks at death differently than we do. For them, it's a portal that they go through to get to this new elevated level of consciousness. So they tend to look at the overall experience as a positive thing, as opposed to us focusing on, like in your case, your mother dying of cancer. But see, you're looking at it the right way. Her passing was not a condemnation. Rather, it was relief from the suffering that she was going through.
Yes. And she, yes. And that wasn't, for my brother who still goes to her grave when he's in town and sits and has coffee with her, to my sister who sees the hummingbird. You mentioned that last night about people who have that. And I thought that was such an awesome way can you explain that? Because people do have this thing, well, I see a hummingbird or a butterfly and I know that it's my mom or my brother or the loved one.
I always find a penny heads up. It's not that spirits make those things materialize. They can, in the chapter in Evidence of Eternity entitled Frequency Beacons, I explain that. And the way I like to describe it is, think of a three-dimensional spider web, and everyone and everything that we're connected to, we're energetically linked. So it's like parents who suddenly know something's wrong with their child. And people just accept that as a reality. Well, there's an energetic connection. When someone transitions to the other side and they revert to this purely energetic state, that link is even more intensified. So frequency beacons are, if you're grieving very heavily about a loved one, think about when a fly hits a spider web and how it sends a vibration along the web, and the spider is aware of it. Okay, so I'm not looking at the spider in this context as a negative thing. Conversely, spirits can send a frequency beacon to you, suddenly prompting you to turn on a radio when you're driving your car, and there's that song that, oh my God, that was played at our wedding. Or suddenly, I need to look down and to the left, there's a penny heads up, or I need to look out the window right now and there's a hummingbird. Or even more intense would be dreams where people's brainwave frequency elevates to a point where spirit can bring his or her frequency down to a lower level, get a frequency match. Or people who suddenly smell a familiar scent.
Yes,
maybe
that happens to my brother with my mother's perfume.
Right, I was going to say that. And, like Shalimar or something like that. He smells Shalimar, and there's no Shalimar bottle anywhere nearby. And there are a number of ways that they can emit that frequency to us. So they can direct our attention, and they can direct the attention of things like birds, butterflies, to come into our field of vision. And people say, oh, well, that sounds like hocus pocus. But when you start studying spirit communication from a scientific basis, it's all about frequency, vibration, and energy transfer.
And that's what's so fascinating, because I that's what you talk about in your Evidence of Eternity.
Yes.
And the way the book is written is engaging and enjoyable, and
Thank
you know, I'm not sure that your humor comes through in it like you do in real life, right? But I don't read very many books. I'm always busy. I'm always in front of a computer. And, you know, for me to take the time, I do a lot of audio because I'll listen to audio while I'm working. But I downloaded your book, and I would just sit quiet in the morning and read it. And I just, you know, the way you explain the energy and the frequencies, and I want people to buy your book, Evidence of Eternity by Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer. But there's also, it's so enlightening, right? It kind of, it makes it click. It makes it not seem so hocus pocus, because I think that there's kind of like a movement right now where more people are understanding the connectivity of our souls and of the human race, or of everything in general, and so it's becoming more accepted. And this book is extremely timely for that reason.
More people believe in reincarnation now than ever before in history. Traditionally, reincarnation has been a Hindu or a Buddhist concept, but now
and a Kabbalistic or a Jewish concept also.
Exactly, yes, it is, and I get into that in the chapter on reincarnation. In the Hasidic sect of Judaism, reincarnation is discussed, as in the early Christian era. Reincarnation was discussed by the great theologian Origen of Alexandria. And what happened when spirit communication became sort of in vogue was in the 1850s, 1860s, during the Victorian era. And that's where a lot of the terminology and understanding of it was developed. The problem is, there it has stayed. And so when I wrote Evidence of Eternity, I wanted to bring spirit communication into the 21st century, because between 1850 and 2015, our understanding of telecommunications, energetic transfer, frequency, and vibration has literally come light years.
Yes.
And so I'm explaining spirit communication based on sound scientific principles, quantum physics,
right,
human physiology, theology, because I don't believe that faith and science are mutually exclusive. Traditionally, people that believe in God and in the afterlife are in one camp, and the scientific field is in the other.
Right.
But with the advent of near-death experience research, beginning in the 1970s with Dr. Raymond Moody, who has endorsed Evidence of Eternity, we have seen that scientists who may have even been agnostic, like Dr. Jeffrey Long, he also endorsed the book, began to believe in God when they started seeing that our consciousness actually survives our physical death. So if you look at one of the basic laws of physics, energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. And what does every belief system since Krishna 5,000 years ago in Hinduism, through Buddha, through Christ, through Muhammad, through Yogananda, Paramahansa, through St. Francis of Assisi, all the way up to Pope Francis and Billy Graham and every other, and Native American spirituality.
You're not mentioning Scientology.
I'm not mentioning Scientology.
I just want to make that a point.
Well, but my point is this, is that the soul pre-exists the body, comes into the body, and when the body no longer functions, the body moves on. And while I'm aware of the concepts of Scientology, it's not really a belief system that I've spent a lot of time studying.
Yeah, they're just right down the street, so we throw that in every once in a while because you got to watch out. We might be in the radius of the people. The dimensions are interesting. Like, I grew up Jewish, and then I studied Kabbalah for a few years, and it was very interesting because it's the tikkun, right? So we come into this world and we're here to correct tikkun means to correct what we need to correct. And when you were talking last night about how there's the different dimensions, and I love how you put it, because there's you can call it purgatory because as you said, the way who the people are or the spirits are that are coming in is kind of how they present themselves, right?
Right.
And I don't believe in purgatory because in Judaism I didn't even know what purgatory was except for my bedroom with the door shut when I wasn't allowed out, But that in the 10 sifrot or whatever, and the 10 different levels, you have to move your way up to the highest,
Correct.
To the endless world, to the light.
Yes.
to the light. And so it's all kind of the same.
It is. The major belief systems, Hinduism and Buddhism, have multiple levels to the other side. My joke last night was even in Catholicism, heaven's for Catholics,
Yes.
purgatory's for Protestants, and hell is for everybody else, that we have levels on the other side. But even the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there are 3 different levels to
Yes.
heaven. Islam has 7 different levels to heaven, and certainly different levels of hell as well. And when studying spirit communication in near-death experience studies, spirits tend to talk about the levels of the other side when they come back. In my direct research, communicating with spirits, they talk about that. And in the chapter, The Levels of the Other Side, in Evidence of Eternity, I go into extreme detail about that, because there have been several spirits who've told me that, yes, it's like a continuum over here. So everybody doesn't immediately go into the super white, bright light, but no matter where you go on the other side, you have the ability to emerge from that. So there's not an archetypical hell, and I don't believe in the devil, and I don't believe in hell.
Right. Right.
And as a Catholic, I was,
Right.
really much believing in hell. But
Why the hell would there be a hell?
why
You
would
know, I mean, if you're going to burn in the fires of hell.
Well, hell originated in ancient biblical Old Testament times. Outside of Jerusalem, there is a valley known as Gehenna. And for people who could not afford a proper burial, or criminals, they were taken and their bodies were thrown into sulfur pits, hellfire, and brimstone. So it became a belief in ancient Judea that if you were bad or dishonored, that's where you ended up at. Then as Christianity began to arise, that got incorporated. Then when Islam overwhelmed the area, that got incorporated. Then as the Roman Empire came into contact with the Nordic tribes, the Nordic god Loki, who is this mischievous lord of the underworld. And by that time, the Roman army in the eastern provinces, which would include Syria and Judea, were influenced by the cult of Mithras from Persia, which is Iran, and Zoroastrianism, which is the eternal struggle of light and dark. So over the centuries, incorporated into Christianity and Islam is, if you're good, you go to heaven. If you're bad, you go to, instead of Gehenna, it became hell. That a Loki-like character was presiding over that. Now, without going through an immense history lesson, people say, well, how did that all start? When the Roman Emperor Constantine declared that the Roman Empire was now Christian, what happened was the imperial decree said that Jesus is God and will return. But until he does, I, Constantine, Emperor of the Romans, am God's representative, vicegerent on earth, and the equal of the apostles. And if you obey me, you will go to heaven. And if you do not, you will go to hell. The fascinating thing about that, the Eastern Roman Empire, which we now know as the Byzantine Empire, lasted until 1453. And when the Turks were swarming over the walls of Constantinople, the last Byzantine emperor, also with the name Constantine, his title up to the very end was equal to the apostles, God's vicegerent on earth. So that's where the divine right of kings came from. And so when you look at images of God in the medieval era, even up until Michelangelo, he has a very Constantine look about him. The white man with the curly hair, sitting on the throne, smiting those who do not follow his will. Now, I firmly believe in God.
Yes.
But we tend to anthropomorphize God. In other words, we put a human face on God because God is this loving, infinite intelligence in many ways beyond our understanding. So to bring this infinity into a finite concept that we can relate to, we put a Hindu face on it.
Do you believe...
Or a human face on it.
Human. I was going to say, I'll go with that just because he said it.
No. My point is that in near-death experience studies, which have been conducted in India, when people go into the light, they tend to see Hindu deities like Vishnu, Krishna, or Shiva. In Christian countries, people see Jesus. In Buddhist countries, they see Buddha.
Well, they basically see what they want to see, right?
What's happening there is when we die, we are reverting back from a finite to an infinite state.
Right.
So in that transition, you see the light, you see people that have died, and then you go beyond that and you encounter, as Dr. Evan Alexander referred to it, as a colleague of mine, that you encounter this intelligence, this love, this light that can only be referred to as God. So at that point, we have not quite made the transition from a finite state of consciousness to an infinite. So therefore, we're still interpreting it on
Of what we
finite
know.
bounds. And that's why Hindus will see a Hindu deity,
Yes.
Christians will Christian, Japanese will see Shinto kamis and deities, Native Americans will see the Great Spirit, and so on and so forth. So what Dr. Kenneth Ring, who wrote the foreword to my book, said is one of the things I like about what you do, Mark, is that you take up where the near-death experience trail goes cold. Because in sessions where spirits have communicated to me about God, they say that you can't even begin to comprehend what God is like, and it is so, God is so incredible, wonderful, and loving, and the most loving parent of all, who would never condemn a child, and we're all the children of God, to an eternity of hell and suffering.
Thank you for mentioning children in a way. When we lose a child, one loses a child, it's horrible, especially unexpected death, or a child is born with some type of disability or illness or whatever. The way that it's extremely sad, but when I see children who are suffering from an illness or from a disability, I have to go back to what I learned, and I learned that they have come to this. It's like somebody would say, well, why does God bring a baby into this world and that baby only lives 6 months? I believe that God brought that baby into the world because the parents need to learn something from that child. The child, they say, I don't know if it's the dude up there or whoever, when I say they say, but I would like to believe that children know no suffering. In a way, when they come into the world and they're, because these are all the things that people say, oh, there's not a God, or God is unfair, or why does God, have, but encountering, here's what I'm, I stopped to give a homeless guy, which I rarely do, at the corner of Lincoln and Venice Boulevard. He was standing on the corner. I drive by that corner all the time. People are begging or panhandling or whatever. And this young man was doing the same thing, but I rolled down my window and I gave him a $20 bill. And when I gave him a $20 bill, he looked at me, and our eyes met, and I cried for hours after that. And I want to cry now, because there was just something about him that taught me something, just in those seconds of our connecting. I've never seen him on the corner again. Okay, so I think he was an angel. I think he was there, because usually you see people on the corner, they're kind of like, that's their corner, and you see kind of the same people all the time, which is the cause for not stopping. They're begging all the time. But this guy, and I called my 2 sons, or I texted them actually, and I said, I had this experience this morning, and I want you 2 boys to understand, they're both grown, my boys, that it was the whatever happened to this young man in his life, to have him be standing at probably 20, 22 years old on a corner begging for money. And then that connection, it was when he touched the bill and I touched when we were like exchanging that, it was so powerful for me that I cannot believe that he was sent for any other reason than to teach me something. Do you find that happens? I mean, I don't know really how to explain it. Like with children.
I think you've explained it very well.
Thank you.
And it depends on how you want to look at it. You're saying that this could have been an angel. And I know I reference Hinduism a lot. I reference all the religions. In the West, we doubt the existence of God, whereas in the East, seeing God or an angel is part of your spiritual experience. And there's an old saying that everyone in the world is my superior, and that I may learn something from him or her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if when I see babies or I see handicapped people or kids primarily, I have to believe that they're here to teach someone something.
We're all here for a reason.
Yes.
And nothing has happened chance.
Right.
I don't believe in circumstances.
And they're not suffering. I can't believe they're suffering.
Well, not on the other side. They're not suffering. But when a baby dies, or a child dies, it is so difficult to process that and to say, how can God allow this? I know a lot of people who say, I don't believe in God. How could God do this? Yet, without doubt, how can you have faith? Mother Teresa, one of the most kind and compassionate humans ever to have graced this planet, went through years of doubting even the existence of God. I mean, on the cross, Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? So if you or if anyone goes through a period of doubting the existence of God, realize that you are in extremely good company. Because if being spiritual were easy, if being connected to God were easy, then everyone would be spiritual.
What causes people to truly not believe in God, to be just an out-and-out atheist, do you think? Because God is not God isn't, when I think of God the way you think of God, as just this amazing bright light.
Energy. Yes.
That's how I think of it.
Intelligence.
Always here, always around. In the darkness, there's the light. It always there, as opposed to, I'm not a person of worship. I actually stopped. My husband is Italian, Catholic Italian, goes to church every Sunday, and I admire that in him. But I don't find the need to have to go to a house of worship. I feel as though I can do that on my own. But what is it that makes people truly not believe? I mean, how can anybody think that this is it, man? This is it. You're brought here. You're going to live in this physical world, rot, and then go and die.
Atheism is a religion unto itself. It's a belief that in the beginning there was nothing, and then nothing happened to nothing, and for no reason whatsoever, nothing suddenly exploded, creating everything. And then bits of everything started transforming themselves magically into self-replicating organic material that eventually transformed into dinosaurs.
That's what they believe. Well put. Touche. Glad I asked that question. That's good. That was a good answer. Can I ask you a question about last night?
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's my personal experience, because this is really, it's kind of funny, right? And I wanted to share this with you last night, but the room was interesting. So now that I've got you here. Okay, so here's what happened last night. So the second person that comes through is, Mark goes like this. He goes, Karen with Karen with a K, right? Like that. And I'm thinking, oh, that's me, right? Because on my way there, I had a friend who died of breast cancer named Karen Deanna. And I only knew her for a very short period of time, for maybe a year.
Oh, were you the margarita lady?
Yes. Yes. Okay. But wait, so you're going on about this stuff, and I'm going immediately when you said Karen, I go, okay, that's got to be me, because that's got to be Karen. And then I started to think, when I'm standing up there as you're talking, I'm going, well, maybe that sounds like this other Karen, but I don't know if she's dead or not. But you were talking about a different Karen, of who she called me my gal pal, and the tinsel. I remembered the tinsel. Mark starts talking about she really loved to overdo the tinsel on a Christmas tree. Now, I would never know that about Karen Deanna, because she was dying of breast cancer, and She smoked and she drank the whole time she was fighting cancer, and it was like the stupidest thing I ever saw in my life. And that's why, and she had this great laugh, all the things you said at first. But then you started to say more, and I thought, what if that's Karen Curtin and she's passed and I don't know it, because that sounds like Karen. And the tinsel thing I remembered this morning, I lived with Karen for a very long time, many years ago in Santa Barbara.
Right.
And I remembered this morning me saying that that tinsel on the Christmas tree. I remember she taught me how to put that stupid tinsel on a Christmas tree.
There's a technique.
Oh, there was a technique to the tinsel, but other than that, I really don't know if she's dead or not. So that's kind of weird for me. It's like, and I'm trying to figure it out. I can't find her anywhere on the internet. I can't find anything. So I'm assuming that she probably did pass, and I just don't know it. Does that happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, last week I was doing a reading for this really sweet lady, and it was over the telephone because I do a lot of phone readings. So people are like, wow, how can you do that? And I can get into that in a minute. But during the reading, all of a sudden I saw a bottle of Pepsi. And I said, okay, I'm seeing a bottle of Pepsi Cola. And the client goes, whoa. She goes, I used to work for Pepsi Cola. I was in their administrative end. And I said, great. So then we moved on to something else. Well, the next day she sent me an email. And she said, after the reading, I called my best friend that I hadn't talked to in years that I worked at Pepsi with. And his wife answered the phone and says, he died yesterday. In other words, while we were doing the reading, this gentleman died, and she goes, that had to have been him. She goes, why else would that come up? And I said, well, there are no coincidences, and I just don't pull random soft drinks out of thin air to throw at you. But what it was is he popped into the reading and gave me that image for her, and that's not an unusual thing. I have things like that happen quite a bit.
We were very close, this Karen and I, and we did drink margaritas and we partied at Cinco de Mayo. And she called me. We did. We were young when we hung out, right?
Yeah.
And we lived together and things like that. I'm still trying to figure out the nickel and the other things, but that was my main question for you because I'm not sure if she has passed or not, and maybe she was there to tell me she has.
Well, I've also had circumstances where people who are in comas come and communicate, and what we believe, we meaning mediums like myself who study this as a science, is that and that's one of the reasons Evidence of Eternity is on several different best-selling lists, including astral projection, because even though your body may still be functioning, your consciousness can move around. And I've conducted readings for a number of people who were comatose, and the client receiving the reading said everything you gave was accurate, but they're still alive. So yes, because they are literally between this side and the other side.
Yeah. I had a young nephew that was in a car accident, and he was, they had to basically pull the plug when he was 10 years old. And taking that to I told you right before we went on air that I've had experiences with other mediums, and I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the difference between mediums.
Sure.
This medium, a lot of my family went to her. It was really lovely for me because although when my mom passed away, I was sad, I was happy at the same time because she was out of her suffering.
But it's your mom, and you're going to miss her physical presence, and
exactly.
it's normal.
And I still do.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
Right. But what was really great was, my when people go, and her name is Fariba, and she's in Orange County, but to have and I don't know if your private sessions are similar. So I really, I guess my question is, why do mediums, or how do mediums, once they connect with the other side, why is it that the people on the other side supposedly can tell the future, right? It's like the advice last night, which was really interesting, that Karen gave was about something about my financial matters, right? Well, I'm going right now. I'm going through a deal where, I'm still waiting to hear, and I'm hearing this, and it's like this, and it's actually about this product right here. And, I'm kind of like in the purgatory of the deal.
Limbo.
Thank you.
Which used to be a level to the other side, but it got canceled at one of the Vatican councils.
But I know that I know so many people go to mediums to get advice from the other side on what should I do? I've got this business deal. Why is that? Why do they know the future, or do they know the future? Or what is that all about?
They won't always reveal to us future events, but once again, this is the difference between being a finite entity and an infinite entity. if you look at the great physicists over the last century, such as Albert Einstein, Richard Feynman, and Stephen Hawking, time does not exist.
Right.
And see, we think that because we're born, we
Right.
grow old,
I
and we
love
die, we're moving in a linear direction, from left to right,
Yeah.
just the way we read. Maybe in Japan it's from
The other way, but, yeah.
right to left, but we tend to think that there's a starting point and you go in one direction. And certainly that's very logical and normal for us to think that. But the other side is all energy vibration. So what we consider to be the past, present, and the future are in an energetic sense all
happening
occurring
at the
and
same time.
resonating simultaneously. What gets fascinating is in reincarnation in India, in Hinduism. They believe that when you reincarnate, your next life could be in what we consider to be the past, because time has no meaning.
Wow.
And that's what I find fascinating about Hinduism. When you get past the fanciful imagery and look at the way they analyze energy and creation, their philosophy is very similar to quantum physics on many different levels. And so that's why I believe that science is now beginning to prove what people of faith have known for centuries. So because time has no meaning and everything is occurring simultaneously, a spirit is able to see what we perceive to be the future. I get a lot of people who say, I'm going to miss him so much. Will he be there when I die and go into the light? Well, even if you lived another 50 years, a loved one, in their reckoning, you'll be along almost instantaneously, because time for them has no meaning as we understand it. And what's fascinating is this is a lot of what Stephen Hawking talks about, although he is an atheist. And I'm a huge, huge fan of Professor Hawking. But I also would say to him, nobody is infallible, and boy, are you in for a big surprise when you cross over. And it's going to be a wonderful surprise for him, because my heart goes out to Professor Hawking, the greatest mind since Albert Einstein, since Leonardo da Vinci, and then he has to suffer with ALS.
Yeah.
Yet, for whatever unknown reason, he was only supposed to live 2 years. 50 some odd years later,
That's remarkable.
he's still alive and still
Yeah.
making a huge impact upon our knowledge and understanding of the universe. So even though you don't believe, God bless you, Professor Hawking.
That's really interesting. Do we want to take it's only a minute break, run the commercial, and then we'll be right back? Okay, we'll be right back with more with Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer.
In an average lifetime, 1,500,000 minutes are spent on the toilet. So what's the problem?
When you sit on a toilet, you're at a 90-degree angle.
Nature didn't want us to do it that way.
This causes pushing, straining, hemorrhoids.
That's crazy.
We want to create a product that is great for humanity.
Well, go time just got easier. Introducing Easy Go Pro, the only way to go.
Anatomically, we were designed to eliminate at a 35-degree angle.
You just sit, lift, and go in a natural position.
The benefits list is this long from a pure health perspective.
A healthy colon is encouraged by doctors for all ages.
The key to vitality, it's the key to longevity, it's the key to your health.
Be a healthy goer. Order now at EasyGoPro.com. Try it for 70 days. If you don't absolutely feel better, just send it back for a full product refund. Go time just got healthier at EasyGoPro.com.
Hey, we're back, and you're listening to Living Unfiltered with Wendi Cooper here at UBN Radio, and my guest today is Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, actually the psychic stand-up comedian, because that's what I think you need to be called, because you are fantastic in your gallery readings and when you talk, and I saw you last night, and it was just totally awesome. So let's talk about your book. Okay, since that's probably the reason that you're here, and I just really wanted to talk about all those other things. But let's talk about Evidence of Eternity.
Yes.
My next book I'm going to read is I am going to read Letting Go, although I don't feel as though I need to read the book because I know how to let go. But let's talk about Evidence of Eternity a little bit more. And
Well, my first book's Never Letting Go.
never
And
letting go.
Never letting go, and the lesson And one of the objectives of never letting go is a message I received from my own mother from the other side, that you must let go of the sorrow and the pain associated with the death, but never let go of the love for the person who died.
Yes. So celebrating, I have this thing where when people die, and we've had, young people, suffer from cancer in our family and then go on to the other side. And
there's a protein anomaly in your family.
No, that's me. Yes, I have I'm the BRCA1 gene, by the way.
Yeah, well, hello, that's what I'm picking up right now.
Yeah. Yeah. But I beat ovarian cancer and I've beat all of that. So, I'm probably gonna be the one that lives to be a freaking 100 years old like my grandmother. And I am not the one that wants to live to be 100 years old.
Which is precisely why you will.
Yeah.
Well, the fact of the matter is, Wendi, you are on a new path.
Did you really just say that to me? Because I don't want to be really
yeah,
old.
But a door has open, and what your mission is to bring understanding, education, and enlightenment to people. And the experiences that you've been through have made you the person that you are. So, when you get mediums and spiritual people who are 20 years old and they're trying to lecture people on life, you only get experience through living. It's like being an attorney. Does anyone really want a 24-year-old lawyer, or do you want one that's tried 150 jury trials?
I don't even want a 24-year-old social media person. I mean, seriously, I don't want them doing anything for me. But
I saw this one comedian. He said the only thing people in their 20s are good at are looking better than people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So shut up and strike a pose.
I love it, and I totally agree. That's the reason for doing this show, Living Unfiltered, is because of my life experiences. And boy, have I had a lot of life experiences. And to be able to share them, laugh at them, because the only way you get through life is to find the humor, which you're very good at.
Well, you can't take life so seriously because you'll never get out of it alive.
Bada bing! All right, so let's talk a little bit about evidence of eternity. Let's tell our listeners what inspired you. I think you touched on that a little bit. What to expect, where you are while you're here in Los Angeles, or where you're going to be, where. Well,
I'm going to be touring the country in a couple weeks. On May 15th, I will be in Sarasota at the Sarasota Church of Light, doing gallery reading, lecture, and spirit connections. A week after that, on May 20th, I'll be in Atlanta. I'll be on the NBC Morning Show, Atlanta and Company, and then that evening I'll be at Phoenix and Dragon Bookstore Metaphysical Center conducting gallery readings. And my publicity team is working on getting me in both Tucson and Phoenix in June, and in July I'm already booked at a number of venues there. So if people want to find out about my tour schedule, go to my website, evidenceofeternity.com.
I think that we have that up the entire time.
And on there, you can click on the icon to follow me on Facebook, so you'll see where I'm going to be at, because I really love meeting people throughout the country. And it's great when people come and says, well, I heard you on the Wendi Cooper show. so please tell me where, that you heard me on the Wendi Cooper show. And because it's good for the radio host to know this. Also, what happened when I was on the Never Letting Go book tour? People started asking me all types of questions about what happens when I die. Does my dog or cat, will I see them again on the other side? My son committed suicide. Did he go to hell?
Yeah.
Is there a God? Is reincarnation real? Is there any scientific basis for spirit communication? So I started compiling all these profound questions. And maybe I'm a bit corny, but I really love America. I love the United States, and I love the people in it. And whether I'm in New England or here in L.A. or in the Southwest or the Deep South or the Midwest or in up north in Minnesota or Seattle, people are the same everywhere. We may have our regional differences, and no matter how tough or strong or reserved or outgoing you are, it really, really is crushing when somebody you love dies. And I figured I needed to answer these questions. I also wanted to write a book different than anything any other medium has written. With respect to all my colleagues, most of what they write is the same thing over and over. And nobody is explaining spirit communication or the other side, combining science and faith, bridging the gap between the mainstream and the metaphysical. So drawing upon my skills and critical analytical thinking as an attorney, combined with my gift as a psychic medium, and taking my entire lifetime of study of world religion, I put it all together. And that was the genesis for Evidence of Eternity.
Yeah, and I have to say that with 2 minutes left, I want to make sure that I tell everyone that in reading the book, it's logical, practical. It makes sense. Well, logical and practical makes sense. All the same thing. Enjoyable, and it really gives you an understanding of what it's like for a medium. And it gives people I think it gives people an understanding that it's not hocus pocus, that there's no way you can make that crap up, that good stuff up. Like you did. I saw you do it last night. I saw you do it for me. Bringing somebody from my past that I haven't seen probably in 30 years to me was really remarkable. That was remarkable. I expected my mother to show up, or I expected Tommy to show up, or I expected Thomas, who died in November, to show up. But Karen from my past showed up.
See, in the gallery readings, I try to do one spirit per person, no crowding. But in the one-on-one readings, it's very, very likely.
I wanted to ask you about the one-on-one.
A lot more than one. In one reading recently, I had 14 people, 2 dogs, and a cat come through. So
now
it's not unusual for...
So if people would like to have a one-on-one reading, and you can do them by phone, they do that by going on your website, or...
evidenceofeternity.com, and go to the page. It says book a reading, and it says in big blue letters at the top of the page, please read this entire page first. I have so many people that skim through it and then just start asking questions that are already addressed in the text of that, because I want to explain, this is what I do, this is what to expect. And the phone readings are every bit as accurate as in-person readings, because spirits are pure energy. They're moving at light speed, just like the way we are communicating worldwide on the net through energy and frequency transfer, which is moving at light speed.
So with that, I have to thank you for being here. And Tony's really good at that applause button. And I do believe that I will be contacting you, because I do want to do one of those readings with you. But thanks. Thank you for being here. I hope the rest of your day is a wonderful one. It's beautiful weather outside. I hope you get a little bit of your own energy back, because you're a little wiped out from your trip. But, thank you for being here. I really admire you, and I really admire the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much. And to all the listeners, may God bless you.
Thank you. You too. And that wraps up our show. I won't say beam me up, because that would be a little weird this time. All right, Tony, we're out. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Well, it's time to wrap up another great hour of Living Unfiltered here at ubnradio.com. We'd love to hear from you. So if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, or you want to be a guest on our show, you can reach us at livingunfiltered@gmail.com. And since we're right here in the heart of Hollywood at Sunset Gower Studios, that's like saying, have your people call my people.